All right, Andrew, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you.
Shannon, thanks for having me. I love this stuff. This is exciting.
Yeah. And I'm just really happy to have your perspective on the show. We have a lot of folks here from all different backgrounds, all different perspectives when it comes to money, finance, entrepreneurship, business. And I absolutely love what your business does. If you want to talk a little bit about that and your background, kind of where you come from, what's your story?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, we'll try to keep it succinct because I'd like to get going here, Shannon. But I actually run a division of a 170-year-old company that has a history of helping people achieve their goals in life. And the division that I run with a couple of other partners is really coaching teens and young adults on creating the habits that will make them successful in academics, business, and in life. So I'm a habit-based life coach for teens and young adults.
Absolutely love it. So, what got you into that as your path, as your business and career?
20 years ago, I did this crazy summer job selling education materials, CDs, and websites door to door to pay my way through college. Um, my college degree is a bachelor's of fine arts in acting. I also have a master's of fine arts in acting. And I always knew that if I was going to pursue entrepreneurship and a job in the arts, that I'd better be able to pay my rent. And I learned that selling books door to door. And what happened is that some of the top salesmen in the company, and women in the company, which I was 20 years ago, as I became an actor and an entrepreneur, and took a different path, they actually developed a CEO and management Fortune 500 sales and leadership coaching company. So they've done that over the last 15 years, really, has coached one-on-one managers, CEOs, executive salesmen. But I've always stayed very close with them. And they called me because I've been in the education space for a long time. My wife has been an educator for 25 years. I have 3 little kids myself. And they called me 2 years ago and they said, we're going to do what we've done for professionals, for teens and young adults. And do you want to help us build this, throw some gasoline on the fire, and really impact the next generation? And it was a slam dunk for me at that point in my life, and couldn't be happier. We've coached hundreds of kids now through our proprietary systems and our habit-based learning. And the impact has been absolutely incredible. It's been far, far, far more tangibly impactful than I ever could have imagined.
That's amazing. And tell me more about how this habit-based coaching connects to financial education and their ability to adopt positive financial habits, because I know that's got to be an element of that goal setting. There's got to be a number-based part of that, right?
Absolutely. So here's the thing. In any goal setting that you do for your life, what you measure moves, right? And we have a really unique assessment system called the Ideal Wheel that when our students onboard and they intake into our program, they get to actually grade themselves on 7 different areas of life. And one of them is financial. And so they give themselves a score from 1 to 10 on 10 different areas of their financial life. And some of it is simply like, do you know what compound interest is? It is, are you actively looking for scholarships? And this could start as early as 8th grade. Some of it is, have you had a conversation with your parents about how college will be funded? Not really, hey, are your parents super rich and can pay for everything? Are your parents super poor but have chosen to put money aside and pay for everything? Are you going to get a an athletic scholarship. It's much more about, are you now having conversations so you understand how money works as a 13, 14, 15-year-old? And so you can use it as a tool to your advantage, whether you choose to go to college, trade school, the military, whatever that looks like, that you actually have confidence over your financial future. It's a huge part of what we do.
And I know that those of you listening are probably thinking, God, I wish I had that, right? God, I wish I had that. And the beauty of it is I love what you do with that. Number one, it's also why I'm passionate about volunteering with and donating to Junior Achievement and other programs for kids, young adults to learn about the concepts of money, because that's not going anywhere. Maybe they'll be learning about crypto in the future, but I think that for now, just having these concepts around conversations around money, because there's such a complicated money story in everyone's life. And I want to actually dive into that for a second and talk about, either the money stories that you're seeing in your clients or even yours, and how we can effectively overcome, or maybe the word isn't overcome, but to use that money story and change the trajectory of our future.
Sure. Yeah, great question. So let's start with the money story of the clients first. And then if anyone cares about me, Shannon, I can tell you my money story, but I'll let you guide that. So money story of the clients that we coach right now is, we have people over all socioeconomic levels. Most of them are upper middle class. Maybe their parents are high earners or high net worth. And so the money story becomes, for a teen or a young adult, is, gosh, my parents are successful. Why am I not? Right? My parents are successful. Why am I not? I can remember coaching this young man who is a top track athlete in his state. So more likely than not, he'll probably get a full scholarship somewhere to a Division I school, right? Won't have to worry about higher education, the cost of it. But coaching was really, really, really hard with him, Shannon. It was really hard because he wouldn't open up. We would talk about future goal setting. And the last call we had, as he was transitioning out of coaching, said, hey, man, let me know what you thought of this. What are your fears? And he straight up opened up and he said, I see my parents incredibly successful. And I feel like I don't know the path to be there. And so it makes me not even want to start. That was a big breakthrough for him. It would have been nice if it happened 6 months before. But financially, that's often the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see my parents providing whatever life it is. It doesn't, in New York City, it costs a lot more than in rural Minnesota to live, right? But as a kid, if you have what you need, you think that at 18 or 19 or 19 or 20, your parents had that. They could already provide that for the kids that didn't exist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I actually can relate to that.
Okay.
When I was growing up, so for unpacking mine, and then I'm going to have you unpack yours a little bit. When I was growing up, my parents were, I would consider like upper middle class. They didn't like flaunt money. No one told me how much we made or like that we were, well off or anything. We lived in a suburb of Boston, and we got to go to Disney World every year, which I think is something that most people don't get to do. But
Sure.
we had certain things that were more of a benefit for us, and then certain things where we held back. I know my dad made me earn every dollar, like made me get a job when I was 14. It was one of those things where we were going to learn work ethic and then you get rewarded for it. But I relate to that story because I remember seeing my parents and going, God, my mom's been at the same company 30 years and she's been doing really well. My dad runs his own business and he makes a lot of money doing whatever he does. He was a CPA. And I was thinking, God, how do I I want to provide for my kids the way they did for me. And I felt this immense pressure
Yeah.
to
You were
do something that
17.
did that.
Yeah. You were 17, 18, and you're going, oh my gosh, my parents, you know, at minimum are 15 years older than me, probably 20 to 30 to 40 years older than me. And I need to be there right now.
Yeah. Or I wanted to know, I knew that I had to set the path because there's a lot of pressure on kids these days to pick their career at 17 and what they're going to
Yes.
major in. And it makes you feel like this permanent thing, like they're going to get a tattoo. And like it's going to be this permanent thing on them that they have to pick and pick their course in life. And I really put a lot of pressure on myself to do the right thing that I knew would provide for my family. And I think that that was kind of the pressure that was always present in my own money story.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it. It's, we have to allow financially young people to somehow wrap their mind around that money is a tool and it can be used, or you can view it when you're a teen or a young adult as almost like a chemistry experiment that you just have to watch the data that's happening in the laboratory for a while of how money's moving, how you're making. Do you have any invested, right? What do your student loans look like? Do you have student loans? And just watch that data for 6 months to a year. And more often than not, what's going to happen is that knowledge is going to take a whole lot of stress and anxiety off you as a young person. You might realize you're behind the 8 ball and you might realize you're farther ahead, but you will actually have a roadmap to run on and tools to work with now, right?
Right.
My money story, I grew up in a very, very small town, 1,100 people in Minnesota, more cows than people. My dad was a veterinarian, dairy farms for 40 years, same practice for 40 years. My mom growing up was a nursing professor, and then nursing took on a lot of different avenues. Eventually she stopped teaching and she worked in different areas of nursing. But what I knew about our money is we always had enough, but we weren't going on extravagant vacations, right? There was always an emphasis on saving for the future. We never talked a lot about investing for the future, right? I knew my parents didn't want to lose money, but I didn't quite understand what a W-2 or a 1099 was. I always had a job, but my biggest lesson was after this first summer selling books door to door. I did really well. And I came back home to Lewiston, Minnesota with a huge check and a big chunk of change at the end of August. School was starting. My college was starting the beginning of September, and I had to pay taxes. And, you know, whether it was something inside of me or it was that feeling, I think I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be an artist. And so I better be a great steward of this check. I better keep as much as I can, right? And know what to do with it. And my dad sat down with me on my kitchen table. I'll never forget it. I can see it in my mind. And he just taught me. He taught me that in his vet practice, they all get a salary and then they would do profit sharing at the end of the year. And so part of it, you know, was guaranteed that he knew was coming in. Part of it wasn't. In that same conversation, we learned that my mom did all the health insurance for us. Cause I was like, what's going to happen if I make much money in college? Am I going to have to pay more for my health insurance? And we sat down and he taught me what he knew about how to write things off. He taught me what he knew about how to save a little bit. Right? He taught me what he knew about earning, the realistic, the realities of earning, both as a young person and as a professional. And then most importantly, and Shannon, you'll love this part of it, is he told me they've had the same CPA, my parents, for probably at least 30 years, And he told me, oh, that's a great question. I'll go ask Art Rock. And I thought, wait, my dad has someone who's helping him figure out these problems. And he wasn't stressed out about it. He was like, oh, I'm going to go to the expert. And ever since then, I have taken that and run with it, is to go where people are better than you with money. And we encourage our kids to do this, and then have a conversation with someone who might have been there before. And all the fantasy kind of gets stripped away, the good and the bad. It just becomes another thing that you have to pay taxes on. That, hey, can you deduct some things, right? What do you do with the extra spending? And it becomes fun at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that every listener hopes to get to that point where it becomes fun. I'm wondering, so from the perspective of those listening, right? Maybe you're wondering, okay, cool. How do I do two things? How do I ask these questions of my kid? What if I want to be that parent to my kid one day and I want to ask these types of questions? I would ask you, Andrew, on the first question is, what would you suggest that people start conversations with their kids about now, let's say, depending on their age, and you can go into maybe what you would normally encourage conversations to be about at different age levels. And also the next step on that is, how do I become that parent who can educate them, or I can, encourage them to do these things? Maybe they want to see themselves in that seat that your dad was in to teach that. But a lot of folks listening are probably thinking, but I feel like I don't even get this stuff. How can I teach my kid about it? So I know it's a lot, but let's start with just kind of some basic questions that you could ask your kids, or conversation starters.
So what you're really asking is, how can I sell my kids on the idea that thinking about this even matters?
Right.
Okay. So one part of our student coaching, our coaches, is that they were all great salesmen and women. And what you learn in sales is stories sell. And I am 100% bought in that if you just share with your kids, you start sharing stories of your life, and not like, when I was your age, I had to walk uphill both ways. It snowed every day. More like what my dad told me, but he didn't tell me until I was probably 30. Said I learned that he grew up without any indoor plumbing. I would have loved to know that at 15. Just that little story of like, wow, look how far he's come. Maybe I can ask him questions about that, right? Stories of, hey, I had to pay for my whole college. I'm not sure what it's going to look like for you guys, or you know what? My parents paid for all of our college. Or I went to the military for 5 years and then went back to school, and the GI Bill paid for it. And those stories, we don't give kids enough credit, right? That they can actually take the stories and formulate an educated decision on where they want to go financially. So as a parent, one huge thing that we actually train all of our parents on is start sharing stories of your childhood with your kids early and often, with zero judgment. Not that they should do something that you did or shouldn't do something that you did. Just share with them stories, okay? And then the second part would be this: what questions could you ask? Is number one is, do you have any questions for me? What would you like to know about what I did when I was 15, 16 in that situation? What would you like to know about when I was 18, if I had to pay my way through college, if I had to have an extra job, right? And so ask them that. And then number three is this. Use the question, what do you imagine financial abundance feeling like? What do you imagine financial abundance feeling like? Because for some kid, he's going to say, I never have to work. I can play video games my entire life. For some kid, he's going to say, I want the exact life that you have, mom and dad. For some kid, he's going to say, I get to buy a car. Right?
Yeah.
You're not going to know what's in their mind until you ask them, what do you think? Like in your mind, what would financial abundance feel like to you? My 6-year-old, financial abundance for him is having enough money to buy a job.
I love that.
Just to buy a job. I was like, yeah. I was like, sure. Why not? Let's think outside the box. This guy wants to buy a job. That would make him feel really great. So does that answer your question?
It does. It does. And I think let's dive a bit into how we can make the financial subjects more fun in that context when we're asking these questions or telling these stories, because at least my understanding, and I'm sure many listeners will agree, is the financial side of education feels like vegetables to kids. It's like, I just want to go out and play ball. Why are we talking about money? Like the kids want to be kids and they don't want to necessarily learn more about money because it doesn't feel, at least this was my case. Like for a long time, it didn't feel tangible to me as a kid. Like I think I had to worry about too much because I wasn't making any money. I wasn't personally spending a lot of money, especially when I was, I guess, early teens or when I was a kid.
Sure.
And I think that there's a stigma around money stuff that it's just boring and, just, don't worry about it. Nobody talks about it. How do we break free from that mentality? And how do we make money a bit more fun for kids and young adults?
Great question. Just give them a ton of it and watch them blow it. No.
That's a very expensive piece of advice, by the way, for everybody.
No, here's what I think, and this is very personal to me, is start an account, right, for your kids that has nothing to do with their future, whether it be, give them $10, $100, $5, and just check in with them. Watch it grow, right? So it's just like as adults, what we were trained to do, my generation, was to drop your change in a change jar, right? Every week. And then that's like your hot date night. Look at, you guys saved up $100, right? Yep. You guys saved up $100. You get to go to get one burger here in New York City. But do a version of that with kids, right? So I bring my kids to the bank. They don't particularly they're not partying to go to the bank, but they like looking at it because there's not a lot of pressure around them to say, hey, what happened? Why is that $5 now $5.01? Right? Why in my custodial Roth IRA, right, from their lemonade stands and their hot chocolate stands, why does that grow a little faster? And while I was sleeping. And that's fun for them. If you can actually draw a parallel between what they're doing and what it would mean financially, that's a big thing. Another way to make finances fun is if there are ball players, literally just talk about everything as a game.
Yeah.
Right. If they love music or chess, just make huge parallels. It's what the best teachers do in school. It's what the best teachers do. Our economics teacher in high school, mine in our rural town, was one of the best teachers I've ever had. He could make you think about money in such a different way. And you know what? Oftentimes we didn't talk numbers and cents. We talked stories.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It made me think of how I started learning about investing. This is actually a funny story in and of itself. My dad, we went to Toys R Us and I really wanted some toy. I can't even remember. So that's how important it was. I wanted some toy that was the cool thing at the time. I was like maybe 10 years old, maybe 12. And my dad said, that's a waste of money. It was like around the time of Beanie Babies, which he also thought was a waste of money. I had a whole thing of those, wanted me to sell them. And we bought this. I really wanted this toy. And he said, that's a waste of money. Why don't I buy you a piece of the whole toy store? I was like, what? And he bought me a stock certificate for Toys R Us. And he says, now you own a piece of everything in here. And I was so confused. Yeah. But how cool did that feel? I was like, really? He's like, no, really. Everything in there, you own a small piece of now. So take care of it. Make sure, like, if you're going to spend money in there, then you should also make money from that. And that was like 12. And that was taught to me then. So
your dad gave you a huge gift.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also got to do, in about 6th grade, we also got to do a mock stock portfolio. Yes. We could buy different companies, and then you actually had to track the stock performance over time. And naturally, this turned into a competition because you had portfolio teams, and it was who was going to perform the best. And, kids who are probably in 6th grade, that was all you needed was it's a competition. And we were like, game on. We're going to be like, we were watching, MSNBC or whatever it was. We were watching, you saw these kids like logging in the morning, forget the snow closures. We were going, hey, how's Microsoft today?
Yes. I love it. We did that as well. And there was a foreign exchange student from India who became one of my good friends my senior year of high school. And he would crush it. Tushar would crush it. He would come, he'd be like, oh yeah. So now I'm at, my portfolio is at $500,000. It was like, we all started with 5,000, 2 weeks ago. I don't even know how this works. Anyway.
Yeah. I love it. Love it.
That's a great idea. But the key is this, Shannon. And this is over and over as parents. I've said I have kids. I have 3 little guys myself. We all want to teach our kids lessons. We will inevitably teach them lessons. It's part of parenting. But financially, we have to let them fail.
Yeah.
Have to let them make mistakes. And the mistakes become a little bit part of the fun. It sounds strange, but it becomes a little bit part of the fun when on 43rd and 10th in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan, right? They, in their lemonade stand, they don't give the correct change to someone. How are they how is this 10 and this 6-year-old going to figure this out? What are they going to do? I mean, life is about to end. There's a construction worker who needs change on a $10 bill. And it's the struggle of watching these 2 minds figuring out this problem that is fun. And then they come back and they're like, oh, and then we should have given him $7.50, but instead he said, just keep the change. And now we're rich. And as young adults, right, as 15, 16, 17-year-olds, right, even into college, right, we coach all the way up to 28-year-olds, is that there's so much pressure. Am I going to go to college? How am I going to pay for it? Right? All I hear is stories of people being in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt for the next 20 years. They're going to have that pressure no matter what. Parents, if you're listening, they're just going to have that. Whether you're paying for college or part of it, or whether nobody's going to college, those are the stories that are in their mind. And so what we have to do is take a deep breath, allow them to have those stories, and give them a laboratory, an avenue to go have some fun, make some mistakes, earn some money, lose some money, and realize that life isn't over.
I absolutely love that. Would you advocate for, and you said, let them make some mistakes, sharing your mistakes or making them aware of the mistakes that you're making? How would you advise parents to share that with their kids? Or would you suggest that they expose that, they not expose that?
This is very particular to me. I say expose it all. I say share everything. I remember sitting down with my parents. I don't know if my dad will ever listen to this unless I tell him, right? And he told me an investment that didn't go so well for him. And for me, it was a large chunk of money. And I thought, oh my gosh. And life still went on. It took so much pressure off of having to be financially perfect for me. It took so much pressure off that.
Yeah.
It gave me freedom to go and try some things and even not take a ton of risk, right? As a college student, I'm talking as a college student now, right? But figure out there wasn't one right way to go about the next 4 years of my life. There was a myriad of different ways. Financially, how to end that 4 years in a position that I wanted to be in. And part of that was I didn't want to be in any debt. But I wouldn't have allowed myself to think creatively unless he had shared with me, hey, I went down to Colorado State and I couldn't get residency in their vet school. So guess what? I had to turn around on a bus after a year and come home to Minnesota. That wasn't the investment mistake I was talking about, but what a gift that was given to me that my parents, who I idolized, didn't do everything right all the time.
Yeah, that's a common misconception, I think, when you're younger, is that your parents have it all figured out. They're the smartest people. They know the best. And, that's not always the case. We're all human. We're imperfect. But I think that we all strive to do as well as they do. And we do idolize them a lot.
Mm-hmm. Or we don't, or we coach kids who hate their parents,
Yeah.
And then you get to see your parents made a lot of mistakes and you get to go make a lot of mistakes and you get to control what's in between your ears to become a different person.
Yeah.
Right?
So what would you recommend in terms of, let's talk about educating kids on financial concepts, taxes, business, and all of these types of things? Of course, there are college degrees for around these things, right? And maybe sometimes high school classes. But how young do you recommend people start conversations around money, business, finances?
It's a great question. There's probably people that are a lot better at answering this than me, but there's a great book called How to Make Your Kid a Money Genius, Even If You're Not. And it talks about how just really even in preschool to kind of have them thinking about it, right? One thing that I would do, because it was so interesting and paradigm shifting in my life, and it has been with a few students that I coach, young people that I coach, is if you have a good CPA or a bookkeeper, or if you run your own business, right? You probably have a lot of people that are listening there. Have your CPA, whoever runs your numbers, sit down with your kids for 15 minutes over a Coca-Cola and share with them some things, because it's going to take you out of the picture, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I get to sit down with my mom and dad's person who deals with all their money. This is really exciting. They get to talk to an expert. I would do that 100%. And I would do that early on. I would do that middle school. Yeah, middle school.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I would gladly talk to any middle schooler and help them either understand money or even talk to them about what I do for their parents, right? Because that's such a huge gift, like you said.
Well, because what happens in schools, like in schools across the country, public, private, charter schools, you bring in experts of things. You name it. You bring in experts, and kids at schools pay a lot of money to have someone in and give a talk on, how to be a policeman, how to be a fireman, how to be an entrepreneur. Well, you can do that in your home with money. Yeah. How to be a tax preparer. Why don't you talk to my tax preparer?
Absolutely love that. I love that. So let's sort of wrap up with I have a few rapid fire questions for you, actually, that I ask everybody. And I'm excited to hear your answers to these. So, Andrew, what is one investment that you currently can't live without?
Oh, what a great question. My solo 401ks. I love it. I love that vehicle.
The literal investments. I love it. What is one thing that you learned about money that turned out not to be true?
Ah, wow. Great question. That going to college, I have 7 years I have graduate and undergrad, right? And I'm very proud of them, but that going to college is the only way to have financial independence.
Okay. And what makes you feel like a millionaire?
Freedom. For me, it's 100% freedom. If I can spend a day in the middle of the week with my kids, if I can write a check to go on any sort of vacation at any point, whether it's over a holiday or not, with my family, absolute millionaire. What will make me feel like the biggest millionaire of all time is to having 100% work optional lifestyle.
That is, I think, what we're all striving for. That is the best. I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate you coming and taking the time to be on the show to share your thoughts. And there's so much value in here from the standpoint of helping kids get more educated around money, coaching each other as business owners, coaching others that you know, and really reframing this stigma around money to be more about story and more about, you know, the basic elements of what it takes to be financially successful without any of the, I guess, assumptions that we've been taught when we were younger. So I want to thank you so much for shedding some light on that. And if people are interested in your coaching for their families, for them, where can they find more information about you and your company?
Absolutely. So you can follow me, just making a fool out of myself, on Instagram at Andrew Coaches. Facebook, it's just my name, Andrew Hovelson. That's Hovel like shovel. You can put it in the show notes. And then across all social media platforms, our company is at Student Coaching SWC.
Perfect. We'll include all of that in the show notes for you. Thank you again for being on the show and sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Shannon. This was a blast. I loved it.
All right. See you next time.